When 32-year-old Amanda Torres stepped up to the Family Feud podium and said 3 words that would expose a hidden epidemic, nobody in the studio knew they were about to witness the most invisible battle ever shared on television. But it wasn't just what she said that stopped Steve Harvey cold. It was the way she said it, with the exhausted determination of someone who had learned to smile through pain that no one else could see. The cameras kept rolling, but this wasn't entertainment anymore. This was the moment when America met its most misunderstood warriors, those fighting battles that rage beneath perfect facades. Tuesday afternoon at the Family Feud studios in Atlanta began with the familiar rhythm of a game show taping. The Torres family from Dallas faced off against the Kim family from Portland. But there was something about Amanda Torres that production assistants noticed immediately, the way she moved carefully, deliberately, as if every motion required conscious thought and energy management. Amanda Torres, 32 years old with shoulder-length brown hair and a smile that seemed to require effort, stood at the family podium wearing a carefully chosen outfit that looked professional but concealed the heating pads and compression garments that helped manage her daily pain. Next to her stood her husband David, 35, a software engineer whose attentive positioning near Amanda suggested years of learning to anticipate her needs without drawing attention to them. Completing the Torres family were Amanda's sister Maria, 28, a physical therapist who understood chronic pain from a professional perspective but had learned about it personally through Amanda's journey, and Amanda's mother Elena, 57, whose eyes held the particular worry that comes from watching your child suffer from something you cannot fix. What the studio audience couldn't know from Amanda's composed exterior was the battle she fought every single day just to appear normal. They couldn't know about the mornings when getting out of bed felt like lifting weights, or the careful calculations she made about energy expenditure for each activity. They couldn't know about the medications that helped but never fully resolved the widespread pain that had defined her life for the past 8 years. Amanda's journey with fibromyalgia had begun gradually, insidiously, in ways that made diagnosis maddeningly difficult. At 24, she had been a rising marketing executive, training for marathons, planning her wedding to David, living with the comfortable assumption that her body was an ally rather than an adversary. Then came the fatigue that rest couldn't cure, the muscle pain that seemed to migrate throughout her body, the sleep that never felt restorative. For 2 years, Amanda had sought answers from doctors who couldn't find anything obviously wrong. Blood tests came back normal. X-rays showed healthy bones and joints. MRIs revealed no structural damage. The phrase, "it's probably stress," became a familiar dismissal that left Amanda questioning her own experience of pain. The diagnosis, when it finally came, had been both relief and devastation. Fibromyalgia, a chronic condition characterized by widespread musculoskeletal pain, fatigue, and cognitive difficulties. Relief because it had a name, devastation because there was no cure, no clear treatment path, and no timeline for improvement. The years that followed had been a masterclass in adaptation and grief. Amanda had learned to manage her career around unpredictable flare-ups, to explain her limitations without appearing weak, to maintain relationships despite the isolation that chronic illness creates. She had grieved the loss of her athletic identity, her career trajectory, her assumption that her 30s would be filled with energy and possibility. But perhaps the most difficult aspect of fibromyalgia was its invisibility. Unlike broken bones or visible disabilities, Amanda's condition was apparent only to those who knew how to look for the subtle signs, the way she favored certain positions, the slight delay before standing, the careful way she managed her schedule to accommodate unpredictable symptoms. People saw a successful woman who seemed to have everything together. They didn't see the heating pad she used at her desk, the naps she took during lunch breaks, or the way she planned every social event around her energy levels and pain management. They didn't see the nights when sleep eluded her despite exhaustion, or the mornings when brain fog made simple tasks feel insurmountable. The Family Feud opportunity had come through Elena, Amanda's mother, who had submitted their application with a note that revealed the family's hidden struggle. "My daughter fights a war every day that no one can see. She deserves recognition for her strength." The producers had been intrigued by the family's story during the interview process, particularly by Amanda's articulate discussion of invisible disabilities and chronic illness advocacy. The trip to Atlanta had required extensive planning. Amanda had researched the studio's accessibility features, packed multiple pain management tools, and coordinated with her medical team to ensure she could handle the physical demands of filming. But for 3 days, she had allowed herself to feel something approaching excitement, focusing on the joy of being with her family rather than the constant management of her symptoms. During family introductions, Steve had approached them with his characteristic warmth, though something about Amanda's careful movements caught his experienced eye. "The Torres family from Dallas. Y'all ready to bring home some money today?" David stepped forward as the family spokesperson, his voice carrying the supportive strength that comes from years of advocacy. "We're absolutely ready, Steve. This is my wife Amanda, her sister Maria, and her mother Elena." Steve approached Amanda with his usual warmth, though something in her posture suggested more than typical nervousness. "Amanda, you excited to be here?" Amanda nodded, her smile genuine despite the energy it required. "Yes, sir, Mr. Harvey. This is really special for our family." Something in the way she spoke, with measured words that suggested careful energy management, caught Steve's attention. He looked at her more closely, noting the subtle signs that spoke of someone managing more than just game show nerves. The game progressed well through the first 4 rounds. The Torres family was playing competently, though Amanda had been strategic about when to buzz in, conserving energy for crucial moments. During commercial breaks, production assistants noticed the family's subtle accommodation of Amanda's needs, David bringing her water without being asked, Maria checking on her comfort level, Elena's watchful attention to Amanda's posture and energy. But it was during the 5th round that everything changed. The category that appeared on the board seemed straightforward: name something people can't see but affects you daily. Amanda had been selected to answer, her first time approaching the podium alone throughout the entire game. She walked forward with the deliberate care of someone who had learned that every movement had consequences, but her determination was evident in every step. Steve read the question with his usual enthusiasm, unaware that he was about to witness something that would transform the entire studio. "Amanda, here we go. Name something people can't see but affects you daily." Amanda looked directly at her family, who were watching with the kind of supportive attention that comes from understanding the courage required for public vulnerability. When she spoke, her voice was clear but carried a weight that seemed to encompass years of hidden struggle. "Chronic pain." The studio fell quiet for a moment. The answer seemed straightforward enough, but something in Amanda's tone, in the way she gripped the podium as she spoke, suggested deeper meaning. Steve paused, his entertainer's instincts sensing something profound beneath the surface. "Chronic pain. That's a powerful answer, Amanda." Amanda nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I have fibromyalgia, Steve. It's a condition that causes widespread pain, fatigue, and cognitive issues. But because I look healthy, people don't understand why I can't do the things I used to do." The revelation hit the studio like a physical force. The audience, which moments before had been engaged in typical game show energy, now sat in attentive silence as they processed what they were hearing. "Every day," Amanda continued, her voice growing stronger as years of silence finally found expression, "I wake up feeling like I've been hit by a truck, but I put on makeup, smile, and go to work, because that's what you do when your disability is invisible." Behind the cameras, seasoned crew members found themselves learning about a condition many had never heard of, suddenly understanding why some colleagues or family members might struggle in ways they'd never recognized. Steve Harvey, who had spent his career reading people and situations, found himself completely engaged by Amanda's courage in sharing something so personal and misunderstood. "Amanda," Steve said gently, walking closer to where she stood at the podium, "tell me what that's like, living with something people can't see." What happened next would transform the show entirely. Amanda straightened slightly, drawing on the strength that had carried her through 8 years of invisible battles. "People see me walking, talking, working, and they assume I'm fine, but they don't see the heating pad I use at my desk, or the naps I take in my car during lunch break, or the way I plan every activity around whether I'll have enough energy." Her voice grew more passionate as she continued, years of advocacy finding their platform. "The hardest part isn't the pain itself. It's the isolation. It's having people think you're lazy because you can't keep up. It's being told you're too young to be sick. It's explaining why you can't do something you did yesterday, because with fibromyalgia, every day is different." The studio was completely silent now. Even the production crew had stopped their usual activity, recognizing that they were witnessing something unprecedented, a masterclass in invisible disability advocacy, delivered with grace and strength. David stepped forward slightly from the family podium, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had witnessed his wife's journey firsthand. "Amanda is the strongest person I know, Steve. She fights every day just to function, and she does it with more grace than anyone should have to show." Steve looked at Maria and Elena, whose faces showed the particular kind of heartbreak that comes from watching someone you love suffer in ways others can't understand. Amanda, Steve said softly, how do you want people to understand invisible disabilities? I want them to know that not all disabilities use wheelchairs or canes, Amanda replied, her voice steady despite her tears. I want them to understand that sometimes the person who looks perfectly healthy is fighting the hardest battle. And I want them to know that kindness costs nothing, but it can mean everything to someone who's struggling invisibly. Steve Harvey, who had hosted thousands of shows and met countless contestants, found himself facing something he had never fully understood. This wasn't just someone sharing a medical condition. This was a woman educating an entire studio about a population of people whose struggles remained hidden because their disabilities didn't fit society's visual expectations. Stop the clocks, Steve called out, his voice carrying across the studio with unprecedented authority. Stop everything. The game show timers froze, the music cut out, the audience held its collective breath. Steve walked to the center of the stage, positioning himself so he could address the entire studio while staying close to Amanda. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve began, his voice carrying a gravity that transformed the atmosphere. We just learned something that every one of us needs to understand. We just learned that some of the strongest people we know are fighting battles we can't see. He gestured toward Amanda. This woman right here gets up every day and faces pain that would stop most of us in our tracks. But she doesn't just endure it, she thrives despite it. She works, she loves, she shows up for her family, and she does it all while managing a condition that makes every day a challenge. The audience began to respond, but Steve wasn't finished. Amanda Torres, Steve said, turning to face her directly, you are teaching us something crucial. You're teaching us that disability doesn't always look the way we think it should. You're teaching us that some of the people who seem to have it all together are actually fighting the hardest battles. Steve reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his personal business card. Amanda, this has my personal phone number on it. Because what you just shared with us isn't just personal testimony. It's education that could change how people treat others, how they understand suffering, how they respond to invisible struggles. But Steve wasn't done. He began removing his suit jacket, the gesture that had become his signature in moments of profound connection. This jacket, Steve said, draping it around Amanda's shoulders, goes home with someone who has redefined what strength looks like. Someone who has shown us that courage isn't about not feeling pain, it's about living fully despite pain. The jacket seemed to transform Amanda, giving her an appearance of the recognition she'd never received for her daily battles. Steve turned to address the entire studio again. You know what we're going to do? We're going to finish this game, but first I want everyone in this studio to understand something. The next time you see someone who looks healthy but moves slowly, who seems fine but asks for accommodation, who appears strong but needs help, remember Amanda, remember that not all disabilities are visible. As the show concluded, Steve made an unprecedented request to the audience. I want everyone here to think about the Amanda in your life, he said. The person who's struggling but doesn't look sick, the person who's fighting but seems fine, the person who needs understanding but gets judgment instead. And I want you to offer them what Amanda deserves, belief, support, and kindness. The response from the audience was immediate and overwhelming. People began approaching Amanda not for autographs or photos, but to share their own stories of invisible illnesses, chronic conditions, and hidden struggles. Amanda's courage in speaking publicly had created a safe space for others to acknowledge their own battles with conditions that society often dismisses or misunderstands. One woman, tears streaming down her face, approached Amanda with trembling hands. I have lupus, she said quietly. My family thinks I'm making excuses when I can't do things. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone. A man in his 40s approached with respectful understanding. My wife has multiple sclerosis, he said. People always tell her she looks great, not understanding that looking good and feeling good aren't the same thing. You've given me words to help her feel seen. The episode that aired 10 weeks later became one of the most educational in Family Feud history, not because of dramatic moments or unexpected twists, but because of the profound lesson in empathy and understanding delivered by a woman who had learned to live fully despite invisible limitations. The response was overwhelming. The show received over 200,000 messages from viewers sharing their own stories of invisible disabilities, chronic illnesses, and hidden struggles. Fibromyalgia organizations reported increased awareness and understanding. Medical professionals noted more patients feeling comfortable discussing invisible symptoms. But perhaps the most powerful response came from people who realized they had been judging others for limitations they couldn't see, who began approaching colleagues, family members, and friends with greater empathy and understanding. Steve Harvey said in interviews that Amanda's episode changed how he understood both disability and strength. "I met a woman that day who redefined what courage looks like," he explained. "She showed me that some of the strongest people in the world are the ones you'd never guess are fighting battles." The jacket Steve gave Amanda hangs in her home office now, next to certificates from speaking engagements where she educates others about invisible disabilities. But the real change wasn't in what Amanda received that day. It was in what she gave to everyone watching. Amanda Torres continues to live with fibromyalgia, but no longer in isolation. She has become an advocate for invisible disability awareness, speaking at medical conferences, support groups, and corporate wellness programs. Her story has helped thousands of people feel seen and understood in their own invisible struggles. The business card Steve gave her sits framed on her desk, representing the moment when her private battle became a public education, when her hidden struggle became a source of understanding for countless others facing similar challenges. Every Invisible Illness Awareness Week, Amanda posts a photo on social media of herself wearing Steve's jacket, along with a simple message: not all disabilities are visible, not all pain can be seen, but all struggles deserve understanding. Be kind, you never know what battle someone is fighting invisibly. The lesson Amanda Torres taught that Tuesday afternoon in Atlanta is profound. Strength isn't measured by what we can see, but by what people endure despite what others cannot see. And sometimes it takes a woman with an invisible disability and an oversized suit jacket to remind a television studio full of people that the most powerful battles are often the quietest ones, fought by warriors whose courage shows up not in dramatic gestures, but in the simple act of getting up each day and choosing to live fully despite pain that never goes away. Because that's what real strength looks like. That's what invisible courage sounds like. And that's what happens when a game show becomes a classroom for empathy, understanding, and the recognition that some of the strongest people we'll ever meet are fighting battles we'll never see.